Hi, everybody. We are live. Yes, we are. Now I see myself. Welcome to Sunday Night Live. I have a special guest tonight, Christina, which I will tell you about her in just a second. I wanted to just say for the people who are here the first time, my name is Anita. And my channel is called Ketogenic Woman. Well, I guess you know that because you're here. So here we talk about the proper human diet and all the ins and outs of that. And we have moderators here tonight, Bonnie and Melissa. They are in the live chat. If you put a Q beside your question, we are going to be answering some questions later. So if you put in a Q or question mark, they'll be able to spot them and they'll organize them for us. And also, let me see, what else did I want to say? I think that's it. So tonight I have Christina with me, so we'll just get her on here. Hi, Christina. So
Hi,
nice to
Anita.
have you here. Christina is from Australia. Where in Australia do you live?
So I'm currently living in New South Wales, but prior to this, I'd spent two
Okay.
years traveling Australia. So,
Okay, that's okay. Sorry, that must be where I got that from because I've seen a lot of your videos where you're in a van or something
yeah.
and camping and things like that. Yeah, so that's wonderful. So, we're going to talk about lion diet tonight. The, so the reason I wanted to have Christina here is because I've been watching her do lion diet. So you and I have been following each other for a couple
Mm.
of years. Sometimes you comment on my videos, and once in a while I comment on yours. And somehow this month you ended up in the same Kelly Hogan class as me, and I was astounded by how you looked. Like, your skin was really clear, you just look amazing. And then I found out you've been doing lion diet. What really attracted me to or can made me want you to come here is because you had already lost a significant amount of weight doing carnivore. So
Hmm.
you are in with the carnivore, but you still had other things you wanted to work on and
Mm.
heal and everything. So can you spend maybe the first few minutes and tell us about that? And then we'll get into some particulars about lion diet and what results you've had and
Mm.
everything.
Awesome. So for me, I started carnivore 2 years ago now. And I
Mm-hmm.
started because I work as a naturopath. I, work with people's health all of the time. But I'd gone through a period of being super, super busy and not necessarily looking after my own health. And I was realizing that I was getting tired throughout the day. And I am a high energy person that if I'm getting tired throughout the day, like I can have a nap, there's something wrong with me at that point. And I was having a nap. So I was like, oh, I need to check in on my own health. And I tested my blood glucose and I saw that my fasting blood glucose was 21.2, which for the US peeps, if you kind of translate that into your HbA1c, it's fairly similar. It's going to be around 15. And so it was really, really high. And I probably at that point should have gone to a hospital and gotten on insulin and done all of those things. But me being me went, yeah, no, I'm not going to do that. I'm going to do what I know helps in these situations, and that is to get rid of the carbohydrates. And I'd been thinking about carnivore for a little while. And I went, right, that's it. Rip the band aid off. I'm going carnivore. And so I took my fasting blood glucose from that 21.2 down to now it's averaged in the fours and fives every day. But, and I'd lost 43 kilos, which is about 100 pounds. But I got to the second year and I started to stall a bit more. And I feel like, those of us who have got significant amounts of weight to lose understand that stall. And the second year of carnivore for me was really about doing the emotional work because I realized that I had gotten to where I was because I was an emotional eater. I
Mm.
distract myself with food. And when you don't have that much to eat, it's a little bit harder to distract yourself from the things that you don't necessarily like in your life with food. And so the second year for me was about doing a lot of emotional work. And I hadn't moved that much in regards to more weight gain, weight loss, any of those types of things, but I did a significant amount of inner work. And so now, as I've entered into year 3 of my carnivore journey, I'm like, I'm ready and raring to like get this kicking off again and get things working again, and to really do some more work on my insulin resistance, because that was the thing that, you know, was continuously sort of raising its head. If I ate too much protein, my glucose would go up. And I'm like, my insulin's still a little bit high there. And so that's when I had done some metabolic flexibility work. And then, you know, most recently I just went, you know what? I want to start back from scratch. I want to see, is there more stuff that I can gain from going into, say, Lion's diet, by getting rid of the herbs and the spices and all the other stuff and everything else there, and just taking it back to bare basics minimum? Is there more to be gained? And there was. Turned out there was. And I'm looking forward to the rest of that journey to see what comes after it. But the last 43 days, I've now been Lion's diet, and that's meant that I've lost 20 centimeters, which is a significant amount all over my body. I can't convert it to inches because my brain just doesn't work that fast. I think it's probably about 10 inches. But it's a significant amount, which is fabulous. But the other most important thing for me is that it's actually brought my insulin levels down. And I've finally started to reach ketosis, because I haven't been able to achieve that previously. And now I'm seeing that I actually am able to do that on a regular basis. So that's some of the exciting stuff that's been happening for me.
Okay, so that's great. So you're carnivore for a couple of years. You had lost 100 pounds. I'm just, recapping for people who are
Yep.
just joining in now. You'd lost 100 pounds and you went Lion diet. And so how did that feel? Like what, because I think there's a few people that are probably in the chat that are going to be doing it with me. So can you tell us a little bit about how did that feel? Like when did you start noticing? Because I've noticed a huge change just in your
Ah,
face and everything. It's been quite miraculous, actually, if you ask me. And I'm kind of excited. Uh, how are you feeling? How you because you're gone past the 30 days now. How many days in
yeah.
are you now?
So 43 days, I think I counted this morning. I think my goal now is,
Okay.
after I got past the 30 days, I was like, I'm thinking I want to continue for 90 days and actually just see what happens there, and really spend some time learning a little bit more about my body and resetting that metabolism a little bit more as well. And so I measured again this morning just to check that I've, still losing. And, I've lost some in kilos, which is, what is it, 3.5 kilos, which is something about 7 pounds
Yeah.
in that last 43 days. But it's more the centimeters. Like, some weeks I haven't lost anything on the scale, but I've lost a big chunk around my waist or around my hips or somewhere else where I'm carrying extra weight, which is fabulous. But I can say that, I don't know about you, but for me, when I was thinking about doing Lion's diet, I was like, oh, how am I going to go? Like, when you're just normal carnivore, you've still got like butter and like chicken wings and like, you still got all these choices. And I'm like, how am I going to go without that? And I wasn't really sure, but I actually have been completely surprised at how easy it has been. And surely 2 years of carnivore has probably helped that really significantly.
Yeah,
But I
definitely.
wasn't sure how I was going to go without butter, because that's been a bit of a crutch in regards to, that's how I get my extra fat in, is with like butter. So
Right.
how do I do that without it? And thinking about those things, but it has been surprisingly easy. And one of the things that I found really beneficial was just how much more quiet my brain got. So, I think anyone who's also had food addiction as a part of their journey understands the chatter that can go on
Oh,
when
yes.
you're sort of teetering on the edge of things. And I have family members that don't eat carnivore, and they, some junk, and they bring that junk into the house and all of that sort of
Mm-hmm.
fun stuff. And so the chatter was a little bit there. But once I'd gone Lion's diet for about a week, it was just like gone. And I'm like, ah, there's room in my head again. There's room in here for me to actually think and process and do stuff, rather than defending against the foods.
Yes, I think a lot of people can relate to that because, just like when we first gave up sugar or, to go keto. Were you
Mm.
keto before you went
No,
carnivore? Oh, you
I was
went,
not keto.
oh,
I was so I have always done the GAPS diet. So probably for the last 10 years, I've been a
okay.
GAPS practitioner. So helping people heal their gut and psychology syndrome sort of issues with the GAPS diet. And so I'd always had that edge, and I'd had a couple of clients that we'd done a carnivore with. But at that time, we didn't actually have the language for it. Like we didn't have the carnivore diet. We just had the plant-free version of GAPS, which is carnivore. And so I'd done
Hmm.
that with a couple of patients before, but I hadn't done it with myself completely. And so that had been my foundation. But the last year prior to me starting was was COVID, and I was run off my feet. And so my husband was doing all of the cooking, and I love the man, but he can't. He can burn water. And so what we ate was a lot of the sad stuff, like, the frozen pizzas and the things, whatever else he could get out of the kitchen was basically
Hmm.
what we
Hmm.
ate. And so I had probably a year of really terrible eating at that point. And then I went, rip the band-aid off, go hard or go home, and let's just jump straight
Yeah.
into carnivore. So that's kind of
Yeah.
where that came from.
Okay. All right. So you're now about 6 weeks into Lion, and you're feeling good. You're just gonna keep going with it. Um,
I was feeling good. One of the challenges that I did have was electrolyte imbalance. Now, when
okay.
I started my 30 days, I was like, nope, I just want to go salt water meat. That's all I want to do. And so I really hung on. The last couple of days, I was starting to get a little bit of heart palpitations because my
Okay.
electrolytes were out. And so I really wanted to make the 30 days though before I actually brought them in. So I made that 30-day line, and then after that I've brought the electrolytes in. The heart palpitations have completely stopped. There's no dramas there. But the other part was that I wanted to test out those electrolytes. I wanted to make sure, were they actually increasing things like my blood glucose? Were they kicking me out of ketosis?
Hmm.
Like, I wanted to check and test those things before I really leaned in on them. And I'm very happy to say that it hasn't, and it hasn't started up the noise for me in my head when it comes to food as well. So that's, for me, something exciting, because I can have a little bit of citrus flavored electrolytes, and it doesn't kick me out and doesn't cause any dramas for me. So that's coming forward with me in this next, 60 days of Lions.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So you've just relaxed that one thing, and
Yeah.
and I think when we were talking, because I know I just know when we get to the questions, we might probably have a couple about coffee or a couple of comments about coffee. And that would come from me too. So the last few days I switched to decaf so that I could gear myself up to
Hmm.
stopping the coffee on Tuesday, which I plan to do for the 30 days. Where was I going with that? I guess what I'm thinking is that after 30 days, some of us are going to just keep going, and some of us might take something back, and that is yet to be determined. And I think it's okay. I think it's okay, because we're all different. And I just
Hmm.
wanted to say too, before we get to the questions, that there's keto people here too, and you guys, if you're doing keto and you're happy and feeling healthy and feeling good and getting those results that you want, don't feel any pressure. Like there's no, I mean, most people who know me know that I'm not going to be the lion diet police. I'm not the keto police or the carnivore police. Certainly not the sardine police when I do a sardine challenge. um we all have to do things that feel right for us. My motivation here, I mean, I've already lost, I've lost 145 pounds doing regular, low carb keto carnivore, but I still have some weight to lose. But I also have, my bigger motivation is my knee inflammation. And this is one question that I did want to ask you for myself, for my own self. So I have been on a waiting list for knee surgery for quite some time. They're very long in Canada, the waiting lists. And I knew that one day I would get the call, that it's time for me to make the decision, um, because I was now on the sort of the short list. But I've healed my knee pain in the last year, mostly with sardines and salmon. Like I eat seafood almost every day. And when they called me last week. I said, yeah, I'm not going to do it. I'm not having any pain. There just doesn't seem to be a reason for me to do it anymore. And they said that is right. Pain is the reason. But my question for you is, and I'm perfectly happy to do a modified carnivore diet. What did you do for omega 3s, or is that a concern for you at all?
So it wasn't a major concern for me, but one of the things that I did when it came to the Lions diet was that I approached it as a week by week thing. Like my goal was the 30 days, but each week
Mm-hmm.
I just wanted to give myself the grace to lean into it
Okay.
a little bit more.
Mm-hmm.
So the first week for me was I'm just going to eat lions. That's all I'm going to focus on. I'm not going to focus on like how many calories I'm having. I'm not going to focus
Right.
on ratio of fat and those types of things. I'm just going to do it for a week. And then at the end of that week, I went, okay, what am I going to focus on this week? And as I moved through those weeks, those things started to change. So the second week for me was now I'm going to look at how many calories am I actually having, and I'm going to try and eat up to my TDEE, and get
Okay.
get that going. And then the third week, I was like, "Ah, I'm seeing my ketones raise a little bit, but not enough. And I think it's
Mm-hmm.
probably the fat to protein ratio. And so the third week was when I really went to my butcher and I said, have you got any beef fat? And he just gave me a big bag of it, 3 kilos of it. And I just chopped it up into pieces and I started to cook it every time I was making something. So I cook in a frying pan so that I kept all of the fat there. I would fry those fat pieces off and then I would put some bone broth in the pan after I was done so that I would drink the rest of the fat along with the bone broth that was in there, as well, to really up my fat. And that was the thing that significantly got me into ketosis and started to shift that over for me. But I just
Okay.
approached it by week basis. And so the other part of that is that because I realized I needed more fat, I leaned more into lamb. Now, lamb has double the amount of omega 3s than beef does, and it
Yes,
has
I've heard.
50% the omega 3s of like a cod. And so, if omega 3s was something that I was really concerned about, I would be leaning in a lot more into lamb and into lamb fat if I could get some extra cuts of that, to actually
Okay.
get those up. But I would still take it that week by week approach of like,
Mm-hmm.
okay, the first week, maybe do nothing and see how you go. Okay, the second week, I'm noticing this. What do I want to add? And whether that is you add in a supplementation, or whether it is you really try and do more of that lamb fat, and lean more into that. That's what I would say, is give yourself some grace and actually
Yeah.
go, I'm just taking it a week at a time, which kind of helped to break down the 30 days as well, rather than looking at
Yes.
it going, I've got to achieve it for this month and I can't have anything go wrong. I'm just going to focus on it for the next 7 days. And then what else do I want to change? And what else do I want to amplify? And that's
Yes.
kind of how I've taken it. It's how I'm kind of going to continue to take it, as well.
I think that's a really good approach because, my knee health and pain level is very important to me. And
Yeah.
so if I have to add a can of sardines beside my beef, I'm going to do it. And even though, and lion diet police can just go watch somebody else or talk to somebody else, but I have to do that for myself. But everything else, I mean, I won't be doing the eggs or the dairy or the cheese. So dairy and cheese, that is kind of my downfall, and I think most people who watch me know that I've struggled with dairy, trying to give it up and take it back, give it up, take it back. So I'm actually looking forward to the 30 days without that to see how that is for my inflammation levels and whether that helps my knee as well. I think it will, to be
Yeah.
honest. So yeah. Thank you for saying that, the week by week grace. I think that is a really healthy way to look at it.
I think
Is
the other thing that I want to say there is like
mhm,
you touched on it beautifully about like the line diet police and the carnivore police and all of those things. And it's not about being as strict as possible and just holding on tight to get through 30 days. The whole point
no,
of doing it is to actually gain back health. And if you're doing it just as a challenge versus my goal is to learn something
exactly.
about my body and to gain some information because everybody's body is different. Like, I have patients all over the world doing the carnivore diet. Not one of them is doing the exact same diet as the other one. They all have got something slightly different because they all have something slightly different going on in their bodies. Some of them can tolerate herbs, some of them definitely can't. And the goal is that we learn about our bodies, not what
Yeah.
everybody should be doing.
I love that, and treat it like an elimination diet,
Mm,
but follow it as best you can for those 30 days, and if there's something, that like I have to have oregano, or I can't live without oregano, maybe bring that back and see how you react to it. I mean, it's not a religion, you guys. It's a way to get ourselves healthier, and I think I like the way that you express that. Is there anything else you want to add before we look at the questions? I know that there's some questions.
Well, the other thing that I would add is that's kind of how I'm doing it in the sense of that
Mm-hmm.
elimination diet. Like it's just get back
Yeah.
to bare basics so that I can test out what's actually going on and what's a problem for me and what's not a problem for me. Just like bringing back those electrolytes and actually testing them out. Are they impacting my blood glucose and ketone levels? Are they stopping me from getting into ketosis,
Mm-hmm.
etc.? And then being able to see that they weren't, because I know for some people the stevia in there absolutely does, and it absolutely does affect them. And it's about that individuality of working out those things for
Mm-hmm.
yourself. And the other part of that, and this is what I'd say for everyone. So let's say eggs are a problem for you. If you eat eggs and they're a problem for you and you release inflammatory mediators to that, so there's some inflammation that's caused by it, it takes 4 months before that inflammation or those inflammatory mediators actually leave your bloodstream. And so if you find out that
Oh,
eggs are a problem, then you want to keep those out for a good 4 to 6 months before you actually even start to think about having them again. Otherwise, you just re-trigger the inflammatory response. And the same with, if, for example, you
oh,
find out that dairy is an inflammatory problem for you, leave it out for a good 6 months. Try bringing it in goat's dairy form versus cow's dairy form and test your numbers. See what is actually happening. When you bring one thing in at a time, you can be much more certain whether it's going to be beneficial for you or detrimental for you if you bring it in, allow it to be there by itself for a little bit, and then test out those numbers.
okay. You have a lot of wisdom to share. I'm so glad that you're here tonight. Let's just look at some questions here. I'm going to bring up some. Oh, okay. Well, first we have to welcome Janine to my membership. Thank you for becoming a member. That's awesome. Look for the private Zooms. They are next week. We have one on Wednesday and one on Friday. Okay, Catherine. My question is, are you going to quit coffee while you're doing the lion diet in October? I'm only asking because if you're not quitting coffee, then I'm not. Oh no, the pressure. I actually am. So what's been happening with me is that uh, about a week ago, I decided, okay, if I'm gonna quit coffee in October, I need to wean off a little now. So I bought some decaf coffee and I've been drinking that, but limiting myself. So just having one, it's big. Okay, it's 20 ounce cup. but it's only one. The regular calf, I was having two of those a day. So just having that, and I did have a headache for a few days, but it wasn't too bad. It was just mild, and I'm feeling a little better each day. Tuesday morning will be just whatever. Whether it's bone broth or hot water or whatever. Now, did you were just drinking tea, right? So you
Yeah,
didn't
so
quit. Yeah. How was that to quit the
I
tea?
coffee has never been my holy grail, so I feel for the people
Okay.
where it is a part of their daily life.
Yeah.
So it's never been a thing for me. So I've never really had to worry about giving it up. But herbal teas, as a herbalist, I've been using
Yeah.
herbal teas most of my
Yes.
life.
Yes.
And so I just decided to go cold turkey on that and let it go, which I think probably doesn't have as much hold as coffee does for a lot of people. And so I just went straight to the water.
Okay.
Yeah. So
Good for you. Good for you.
I would encourage people even to do 7 days, like give 7 days without coffee a go.
Okay. All right. American carnivores love Christina. That's from Linda
Hey,
McBee. That's
Linda.
amazing. Let's see here. Okay, Louisa. Hi, Louisa. How is it different? How? Okay. Do you feel different from carnivore versus lion diet? I think that's what the
Yes,
question is.
definitely. And I feel probably a lot more cleaner in the sense that there was likely, I probably had inflammatory stuff coming from dairy as well. I was feeling like maybe eggs are a bit of a problem for me. And so having those out and removed, my head was a bit quieter and just feeling more energy. Plus, the other part is the ketones. Like I've lived without, barely any ketones for the last 2 years, and
Oh,
occasionally I'll do things like a sardine fast, and I'll get myself into ketosis. And my clients usually can tell when I'm in that because I'll start talking really fast and I'll start using really
yeah.
big words. And that's because I'll get a whole bunch of energy when that happens. But so I've lived the last 2 years without having that primary energy source of carbohydrates or glucose, ketones to keep me running.
Right.
And so having those ketones, like pretty much every day, I can guarantee that I'm in nutritional ketosis over a 1 when it comes to ketones. And so energy has really actually amplified and improved.
That's awesome. Okay. Thanks for the question. Okay, here's one from Cheryl. Hi, Cheryl. As I understand it, becoming fat adapted takes a long time because hormonal healing needs to happen first. Are you considered fat adapted? Are you in ketosis day in, day out, or does it cycle in and out?
Yeah, so that's a really beautiful question. And coming from the place where I was at, so the level of blood glucose that I had, I would have almost come close to being diagnosed as a type 1 diabetic. Because once you start to get up that high, that's usually what they're going to be looking at. Their assumption will be that the pancreas is pretty much kaput, and it's not working to actually provide you with any insulin. And so my blood glucose was really high, so therefore my insulin was really high, and my ketones were like on the floor. And so it has taken time for me to be able to get that metabolic healing and for my body to actually start to become fat adapted. Now, I wouldn't say that I'm fat adapted yet. I usually don't count it for patients until they've been in ketosis for a good. They wake up and their ketones are above a 1 every day. It's boring. They test and there's no surprises there because like it's boring, and it's done that for a good 30 to 60 days. At that point, we know that their body is really starting to use fat as a primary energy source. And so usually what I'll do with clients is the first thing is to say, don't worry about weight. Let go of the weight as your goal at this point. Our first goal needs to be to heal the metabolic system. Once we heal that, the weight loss is the inevitable outcome of your having a healthy metabolism.
Mm-hmm.
And so first, we're just going to do whatever it takes to get you into that space of ketosis where you're fat adapted, you're using ketones as your primary energy source, and you are running on that with no thought process. Like we don't even have to think about whether you're in ketosis. And then we'll start playing around with maybe lowering your fat levels so that you're burning more of the fat on your body versus the fat that's going in your mouth, and so on. And so for me, I kind of think about carnivore and keto as stages. That first stage is like, a lot of people will lose a little bit of weight in that first stage fairly easily, but there'll become a stage where it becomes a little bit harder. And that's because the metabolic system still hasn't quite healed. And that's where we need to focus. And if we put our focus there rather than, I just have to drop weight fast, we will actually get to the point of the weight dropping when it's actually meant to in a really healthy way. Because interestingly enough, the statistics are people who lose weight really fast actually tend to die 10 years earlier.
Mm.
And that is because they haven't
Oh,
allowed their
wow.
body to actually adapt to that process. And we forget that fat encapsulates a lot of toxins. Like part of the reason the fat is there is to keep you safe. And so if you've got fat that's got a lot of toxins in it, imagine this was mercury or heavy metals, and it's encapsulated in a fat cell, when we force that fat cell to come open, we've now got to deal with this heavy metal or toxin or whatever else has been in there. And if we don't have enough capacity, that's where people start to find they're breaking down and their body's getting sicker versus getting healthier, which is what we would expect them to do if they're losing weight. And so statistically, what we find is those that take their time losing the weight tend to have a much longer, better, healthier outcome than those that drop it really, really quickly.
Wow. Okay, that's really cool. So I can stop being mad at myself for being such a slow loser. Oh, thank you. Thanks for that question. That's a great question, Cheryl. Andrea, can I use grass-fed collagen peptides powder in a drink on the Lion diet? Well,
My
I mean,
assumption would
I'm
be
not
yes.
okay. Yeah, you say yes?
I would say yes, assuming that it's come from beef or lamb. That would be my assumption. You know, some have come from things like pork, but if it's come from beef, it's a beef product, I would say yes. Although I personally haven't used a lot of that. I've stuck more to let's just eat the meat and do it that way. But certainly, I would say it would qualify.
It could
But you might have a different
qualify.
take.
Yeah. Yes. Well, no, I'm one of those like for my knee as an example, I went for the sardines rather than the omega supplements. And I kind of
Mhm.
feel the same way. I mean, I make collagen soup. I do things like that. I just really like to get those things from the actual food product. But that, that's me. And, but yeah, technically, that's technically a lion diet, is what you're saying. So,
Yeah.
yeah,
And I would
sure.
be the same. I'm a food-based girl. If I can get you to eat it, let's go that way. But if we can't get you to eat it, then sometimes we need to take it.
Okay, thank you. Luigi would like to know, what electrolytes do you use?
I am using Sodi, which is sort of like an Australian version of Element.
Okay.
And it's a little bit cheaper here for us because we don't have the transport fees. But it's
Yes.
fairly similar. Like when we look at it, it's not identical, but it's fairly close.
Okay. All right. And Evelyn would like to know if one can eat eggs on the lion diet.
Well, the answer
No.
to that would be no. I don't know. Cows and lambs and goats and giraffes have not laid eggs, so the answer would be no.
Yeah. So it's ruminant meat. Let's do that, because there's a lot of people they don't really know what a ruminant is. So it's cows, lambs, elk, deer,
Hmm.
um, uh, there was another
Giraffe.
one. Yeah,
I'm not
bison.
planning on eating giraffe.
I know, I know.
Goat
I laugh
also
about
fits into
giraffe all
that.
the time. Yeah, they are ruminants. But bison is another one. We have bison available here where I live. Now, do you have any animals in your area of the world that are kind of exclusive to your area that are ruminants that we don't have in North America?
You guys have got actually way more than we do. So we've basically
Okay.
got beef, lamb, goat. You might be able to get deer if you hunt yourself or happen to be
Okay.
in one of the areas where you might be able to buy a little bit of game meat. But other than that, it's pretty simple
Okay.
here.
Okay. All right. I just thought we should go over the list. Okay, Yvonne. Hello, Yvonne. I tend to overeat. Are there macros to follow online to hit? I gained on beef, bacon, butter, and eggs. I just want to say something about beef, butter, bacon, and eggs. It's tricky for people. It's tricky for people who also who are volume addicts too, I think. For me, the bacon is a big issue. I can overeat bacon. I can eat a tray or two of bacon at a meal, and that's not really socially acceptable, nor is it acceptable to my body. But I can do it because I love it. So, Christina, your take on this?
So my take on this is the first, like I would take the week approach, which is the first week, just don't worry about it. Just focus on eating the foods that you're allowed to eat and then do that. The next week, once you've got your head around, okay, what does this look like on a daily basis? Then start to play around with tracking and doing some of your macros and having a look at those things. Certainly, the thing that I have found, because I had a whole group of women that came and joined me on my first round of 30 Days of Lions. And the thing that I predominantly found for most of them was they really had to up their fat. And we had to start hitting fat things of around 70 to 85% for some
Mm.
of the big gains that we needed to hit.
Okay. That makes a lot of sense. Charlene, 75-year-old female, been carnivore doing BBBE for 5 months, lost 33 pounds. Yay, that's amazing. But stuck for 5 weeks. Am I eating too much? Not in ketosis, according to Keto Sticks. Please help. Will Lion Diet help?
Yeah, so for me, and you probably would have something similar there, Anita, as well, is the number one thing that I see women do is undereat. Like, undereating is
Yeah.
far more common than overeating for women in this space. And a lot of that has been because we've had this whole message of like, don't eat too much fat, it'll make you fat, and or
Mm.
you've got to eat petite type meals. And so your stomach and your body has learned to fill up really quickly. And so this is where I think the tracking can be really helpful, where you start to go, okay, I'm going to just track my macros for a little bit and actually see how much fat am I having, how much protein am I having, how many calories am I having? Like, I know for myself that for probably about a year of carnivore, I was under eating because I was only eating probably around 1,000 calories. I was full and satiated. I wasn't hungry by any means, but I certainly was really under eating when I sit back and actually look at how much I was under eating. And that can have just as much an impact on weight as overeating can. And so I always like to get people to come and just have a bit of a look at what you're actually doing right now, and get a bit of a clear picture. Now, the calories aren't everything. They're not the be all and end all, and the math is not perfect because, we all have metabolic rates that are
Mm-hmm.
different. Like, 3 months ago, my thyroid was a little bit slower than it is now. On Lion's Diet, my thyroid has sped up, my metabolism has sped up. So I burn calories much faster than I did 3 months ago. And so, those things will change, but it gives us a bit of an idea of what we're actually working with. And
Yeah.
so that's probably where I would start, is actually have a tracking of like, what are you currently doing, and have a really good look at like, what's the intake that you're actually having there.
I think everybody should know how to calculate their TDEE. We talk about that a lot on this live stream and in my groups and everything because you are right. Many people are under eating, and it's this is not one of those things where less is
Mm.
good. It's not. We need, especially women in my age group. I'm 66. A lot of the people that are here are in their 50s, 60s, and we have to protect our nutrition, because as we get older, we need to make sure that what we are eating is giving us as much
Yeah.
nutrition as possible. And you can't do that on 1,000 calories a day. You can't maintain your muscle mass or
Yeah.
grow new muscle for sure. So yeah, I think great question, Charlene. Thank you.
Well, the other way that I like to put it for clients is, let's say something is going wrong in your body. You need something to heal. So in your case, it's your knee that you need healing. Now, the
Yeah.
average person might eat this much a day, and this is, that's maintenance level for them. If you are eating here, then this just grows. Like, your ability to catch up to the average person who's healthy and well and doesn't have that problem actually is much more limited. And often what happens, especially at the beginning of carnivore, when we're trying to heal a lot of things in our body, we often have to overeat before we can actually drop back to a normal level, because you have to overeat in those things that you've been lacking in nutrients of to be able to
Mm.
catch up to a maintenance level. You have to overeat them to start with, and then you can drop back. But most people have, they feel full and they feel satisfied, and
Yeah.
so they're maybe not having that hunger as the trigger, but they're not actually getting in enough to maintain, let alone actually try and heal some of those things that need repair in the body. And so the body's fighting and competing for whatever nutrients you're putting in to see where it
Yes.
can go.
Yeah. 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 Great question. Thank you, Charlene. Okay, golf addict. What exactly is lion diet compared to carnivore diet? Well, carnivore, I mean, do you want to answer that or should I just
You go,
like,
you go.
yeah, carnivore diet is basically all animal products. So, chicken, pork, fish, eggs, butter. A lot of people do dairy, cream, even cottage cheese and yogurt, those sorts of things. All the different meats. If it comes from an animal, it's carnivore. But lion diet is very strict with its ruminant meat. So the ones we mentioned before, like the cow, lamb, goat, giraffe, elk, deer, that sort of thing. And so it's ruminant meat. Salt and water is the most strict form of the lion diet. So that's the difference. What do you eat for breakfast on lion diet? Well,
So my
you go
answer to
ahead.
that, my answer to that now is, I'm usually going to have either some lamb or some beef, but I definitely will have a good chunk of fat. That's the primary thing, and I always make sure that I eat my fat first.
Yeah.
And then if I get too full to have the meat, that's okay. But I don't want to be the opposite. I don't want to be, I've filled myself up on meat and then I don't have enough room for the fat. So I eat the fat first, and then I'll have a couple of like lamb chops, usually about 4 or 5. And that I only eat twice a day. So that'll be breakfast, and then I'll come back and I'll eat again in the evening.
Okay, yeah. And I know what a lot of people who start carnivore will go to bacon and eggs. It's an easy thing for, and it's a very common carnivore breakfast. And it's like just part, just you got to think outside the box a little bit. I mean, one of the things that I have for breakfast more often now, I mean, in the beginning I was a bacon and eggs for breakfast person, but now just on regular carnivore, what I have most often is steak bites. I love steak bites. I put them in the air fryer, and the fattier the better. I love that crispy, crunchy fat that crisps up in there. So yeah, any meat that you'd have for dinner is what you'll have for breakfast on Lion Diet. Okay, that's next question here. The Carnivore Collective, hello there. What does inflammation feel like, and how do you know the signs you have it or that it's gone? Is it just pain, or is there more to it?
Mm. Do you want to start by sharing what it feels like for
Uh,
you?
yeah, so what I'll start with me, and so it's not always just pain, but that is one of the things that does happen. So it's joint pain. Arthritis is a disease of inflammation, and we all think that arthritis is a normal thing that happens to you as you age, but that's not necessarily so. So they say that. I think they say that all disease begins with some kind of inflammation. So, you may not feel all of it. It also can look like flare ups on your skin. I tend to, when I eat certain foods, get a redness, rosacea breakouts, that sort of thing. That's all based in, that's an inflammatory response to your food. Go ahead, Christina, tell me what you think.
Yeah, well, I think probably the most extreme-ish type of version that everyone could feel for themselves would be if you've had a cold or a flu. When you've had that flu and every part of you aches, like all your joints and stuff ache,
Mm.
that's probably the most extreme version of that, because your immune system's working really hard. All of the fluid in your body is swollen up because it's trying to transport immune cells everywhere. And so that's probably an experience of inflammation that most people would have gone through once or twice in their life, if not more than that. But some of the more subtle versions of inflammation can be pain, for example, unexplained pain. If you've got fibromyalgia, for example, you're going to have pain that's
Mm-hmm.
unexplained. There's no necessarily like
Yeah.
I've fallen over and I've twisted my elbow, so therefore my elbow hurts. It's, my elbow hurts, but there's no reason for it to actually hurt other than I've got some internal inflammation. And I would agree that pretty much all chronic illness has inflammation as a root cause or as a root driver. And now for some people, it can be completely pain free. You might not actually really know that you've got inflammation until you sit down and maybe press your thumb into your actual shin bone and actually see that the thumbprint actually stays there after 30 seconds.
Yes. Yes.
For other people, it's a lot of water weight. Like you might feel bloated or you might feel like you're carrying extra weight, but it's not really, a lot. It's just kind of feels like this water weight, like I'm a little bit more bloated than I normally am. That's inflammatory, that's inflammation. But it can present as asthma, eczema, bronchitis,
Mm-hmm.
tonsillitis,
Mm-hmm.
kidney UTIs. It can present as arthritis. It can present as joint pain. It can present as headaches. It can present in pretty much all of the different illnesses that we have, simply because they all have a root in inflammation.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you. Great question. Uh, Andrea would like to know the brand name of that Australian electrolyte.
So it is Sodi, so SODII, Sodi.
Oh, okay. All right. Thank you. Catherine, welcome to the membership. Thank you so much. We'll see you at the Zoom. Christy, are there certain foods on the carnivore that caused you inflammation? When I eat bacon, I notice I've got joint pain a couple of hours later. Yeah, there are. There are. Yeah, definitely for me. Dairy, for one.
I can't say that I have had any that I've noticed, but I part of the reason of doing Lions for me was actually to bring everything back to there's only two foods like that I'm actually eating
Mm-hmm.
right now that could be causing some inflammation if it's causing anything. So it's either one or the other if that's
Yeah.
the problem. And so now, like as I finish off this next 90 days or finish off the 90 days, I will then slowly look at bringing in some different meats because my goal will be to be in ketosis, maintain ketosis, and then see if I bring this in, does it kick me out of ketosis? Now, I'll give people a little quick tip as well that if you have a pulsometer at home, you can do this to work out if a food is inflammatory to you. And that is first, sit down, be calm, breathe, take your pulse at a resting rate, write that down somewhere so that you've got it, then eat whatever it is that you're going to eat. Then retest your pulse at a resting rate 10 minutes after, and then retest 20 minutes after. Now, if your pulse has risen more than 10% at that 10 and 20 minutes after, something in what you've eaten has caused your adrenals to respond and go into fight or flight and produce some inflammatory mediators for you. So that's just something little quick that you can use at home to kind of work out if a food's inflammatory for you. But having worked with patients now for 8 years on this sort of stuff, one of the things, there are a few foods that I find that tend to be the most problematic for people. One is chicken. Some of that is because of how it's raised and what it's fed. So we know now that eggs that are produced by chickens that have been fed wheat cannot be fed to celiacs because that wheat protein carries through into the eggs and then can cause some issues for people who are celiac. Same with the meat. But duck eggs and quail eggs tend to be the least problematic when it comes to eggs and when it comes to meat. Turkey tends to be really not very problematic as well. Pork tends to be highly problematic for a lot of people. But when you brine it, so when you put it in a salt bath overnight, you remove a lot of that problem for a lot of people as well. So those tend to be the big ones along with dairy for most people when it comes to carnivore. But I would say, again, for me, the point of going Lions was to take it back to simple so that I could notice, do I actually have a problem when I bring those eggs in? Does my biochemistry change when I bring those in? Does how I feel change when I bring things like eggs in? And become more sensitized to those things.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Patricia, why does Lion Diet focus on ruminant animals? What is the perceived benefit?
So the perceived benefit of the ruminant animals is a ruminant animal is an animal that's got more than one stomach. So it takes time to actually break down the food and the nutrients. And so less of that then gets carried over into their actual meat. Whereas if you've got, say, a rabbit, it's eating grass, there's not a lot of stomach movement that's happening there. So some of what might be in that grass will be passed over more frequently into the actual meat. So that tends to be one of the big elements as to why people will move towards the ruminant animals, because of their digestive system.
Yeah, so basically they're with the four stomach system, they're filtering, there's four times as much chance of them filtering out the toxins
Yeah.
that pesticides or whatever that are in the grass. That's a good point. Thank you. Cheryl, can red meat cause high blood pressure? My mother's doctor told her that she should eat vegetarian. Because her blood pressure issues related to red meat. And then she says, "Arg" at the end. Yes, I don't blame you for being frustrated with that. Gee.
So I'm going to say no, but there could be a part to play. Now, I say that because blood
Mm-hmm.
pressure is actually regulated by our kidneys. And so when we think of blood pressure, we often think about the heart, but the heart is very little to do with blood pressure. It's actually the lungs and the kidneys that regulate blood pressure. And so the lungs are a short-term process, but the kidneys are the majority process. So when I have a patient that's got high blood pressure, the first thing I'm going to look at is like, what's happening with your adrenals, which sit right on top of the kidneys, and what's happening with your kidneys. Are you drinking enough water, for example? Are you having enough salt, for example? Those are the two ones that I'm going to start looking at. Are you consuming enough that actually feeds those kidneys? So the kidneys and the adrenals need three primary things. Fat. That's the number one thing that the adrenals need. Salt or minerals, or a mineral salt is the other one, and vitamin C. And so often I will get those people to maybe consume a little bit of liver, because that's got a higher percentage of vitamin C in it. And that can often be a big part of it. But a lot of people are under drinking water and under consuming salt. So those are often two of the big drivers. The other part of that is if she's eating a lot of red meat and converting that protein into glucose because she's got some insulin resistance, then yes, the red meat could have a part to play, but it's less about the red meat. It would be the same with any meat. If she was eating chicken, for example, and she was
Mm-hmm.
overeating the protein in that for her body, and if she's got insulin resistance, then that's going to contribute to the blood pressure becoming higher as well. And so there's a few moving parts there. Usually I'm going to shoot people off a little bit more into consume more fat, like switch up that ratio of fat to protein a little bit more. Make sure you're having good mineral salts. Make sure you're having adequate amounts of water. And then, make sure that maybe you're having a little bit of vitamin C, or even some kidney, like eat some kidney or some liver to actually boost that up.
Yes, that sounds great. Thank you. That was a great question, Cheryl. Okay. Oh, here's a question. Here's a question. Jules Bug. How do we get enough food in after bariatric surgery?
This is a really challenging one. And I've found it really challenging for a lot of people, because we're now getting an influx. Because, 10 years ago, we didn't actually have this surgery available. And so now I'm seeing a
Mm-hmm.
bunch of people coming through that have had this surgery. And so for me, I usually am going to blood test and look at their mineral makeup. So I want to look at what are their B vitamins like, what are their, D
Mm-hmm.
vitamins, all of that type of stuff. But the other part of that is we probably need to push a little bit more towards the fat, because fat gives you the calories. Like, it's really easy to get calories when you're eating fat.
Yes.
And some of it is liquid. So if they can do eggs, for example, one of the things that I've found helpful is if they can drink their eggs rather than eating their eggs, to help them get some of those extra nutrients in. Like putting a couple of egg yolks into your hot drink that you might be having helps to bump up your fat, but also your calories, as well as your B vitamin nutrients, etc. And it's often much easier for them to drink it than it is for them to eat it. And that's where we kind of go that way, plus trying to get everything in as easily digestible as possible. So when it comes to meat, the most digestible way to consume meat is really slow cooked. So think of like a lamb shank when it's falling off the bone.
Mm-hmm.
Think about
Oh,
ossobuco when it's falling off the bone. It's really easy. You've already pre-digested that in the cooking process, which means you're more able to actually consume it and get the nutrients out of it with less work when you put it into the body. And so a lot of slow cooking really is helpful. The other part is you've got to try and eat throughout the day, because you can't do the 2 meals a day like other people might do. You certainly
That's
can't do a
right.
one meal a
Yeah.
day. You've got to try and think of snacking throughout the day.
Yes. Yes. Okay. All right. I hope that helps you, Jules. Let's see. AMC Challenge. Thank you for all the wonderful sardine recipes. You're welcome. You're welcome. Wow, we're at like 5 minutes left to the hour. I can't believe it. This went so fast. We have time for a couple more questions. Get them in now if you have any, because we are going to be winding up soon. Just Jason Keto has gifted a membership. That is so kind and generous of you to do that. Thank you very much. Okay, so I'm just going to pop over to the live chat because there's usually... Here's a good one. Just Jason Keto. I am 10,000% in support of people trying to challenge themselves. You can learn a lot about your body in 30 days. That's for sure. And that's kind of what this is about is, I like that whole idea of using it to figure out what you can bring back in later. That is actually how I discovered that I have a real bad reaction to black pepper, which I didn't know that I had. And I discovered that, I guess, about 3 years ago, I think it was. I did an elimination back then. So it's amazing what we can find out in a 30-day period.
Absolutely. Like, and that again for me is the whole point. Like, I don't have a situation like, say, Michaela Peterson, where,
Right.
I've got juvenile arthritis and there's an absolute need for me to go Lions, but I have found it really beneficial to get back to basics and scratch.
Yes, yes. Okay, so we have a couple more questions. Protein. I have seen and heard anything from 82 to 180, it must be grams of protein for a man. It's ideal body weight of 180. How different is it for a woman?
So my math is going to be a little bit squiff because I'm Australian, so our math is in metric,
Yes.
not in the pounds. So you can do a quick conversion, but generally speaking, what I would say to a woman is we want 1 gram per kilo of ideal weight. So for example, if you are 70 kilos would be an ideal body weight for you, then that's what, about 140 pounds, 150, 60 pounds in that metric. Then we want a bare minimum 70 grams of protein. That's not 40 grams and that'll be enough. No, it's bare minimum 70. Now, if you are trying to heal, you need to almost double that. So you need to almost
Mhm.
go to 140. Now, part of that will depend on what else is going on for you. So if you have some insulin resistance or you're type 1 diabetics, you might need to cut that a little bit. But if you're trying to heal or you're trying to grow muscle, you need to at least double that, just about.
Yeah, and I that lines up with what I'm hearing some of the doctors, like Dr. Don Lehman and people like that saying as well.
Yeah.
Okay, so final question here, I think, unless another one sneaks in. But Yvonne, how are you implementing omega-3 starting Tuesday, daily or weekly? So Yvonne, like I've already decided, and actually learned something from Christina here tonight in just how much omega-3s that lamb has. So going to be focusing on lamb for sure. I've actually got quite a bit in my freezer, so I feel really fortunate with that. So I'm gonna do more lamb than what I normally do. But I'm also, if I start feeling that pain in my knee come back, I'm opening a can of sardines, and I'm going to be transparent about that because my knee is the most important thing that I'm trying to heal. So, that may or may not happen, but I'm definitely going to listen to my body and listen to what's happening here. So. Well, Christina, do you want to do you have any final words to say? I will let you know that in the video notes, all of your contact information is down there. If you guys want to, follow her on Instagram. I think she's on everything. She's on Instagram, TikTok, all of that's down there. YouTube channel, consulting. You can make an appointment with her if you like. I mean, everything is down below in the video notes, so check that out. But do you have anything you want to say, final closing words?
I think the final closing words that I would say, especially about omega-3s, is that for some people, I'm a food-based person. I'm like, let's go the food if we can. Like, but for other people, they might be, no, I really want to hold out and I really want to do the 30 days without it, but I'm happy to do a supplement. If you go down the pathway of a supplement, turn the back of the packet over and have a look at what it actually says. Because I was in the supermarket yesterday and I saw they had fish oils, 1,000 milligrams. And I went, this is some fun marketing. And I turned it over and the EPAs on the back were 120, which means that in order to get a therapeutic dose of omega-3s from that particular product, you would have to take 10 of them a day in order for them to provide you with any benefit. And so always look at the back of what the packet says if you're going to take something rather than eat something, and make sure that your goal is to get to 120 grams of, mgs of EPAs.
Okay. Open the can of sardines.
I know.
Christina, thank you so much. This has been rapid fire questions and so informative. I'm so glad that you agreed to come, and I hope you have a fantastic day, because today is Monday for you all.
It is.
Monday. It's Monday.
Mondays.
It's Monday. All right.
Hi from the
okay.
future.
Yes, that's right. Okay. Well, thank you so much for joining us tonight. Good night, everybody. It's time to say goodbye. Thanks again for coming, and we'll see you guys next time.